Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name is James Atkinson. Thank you for choosing to join into this episode. And in this episode, we've got Claudia back, otherwise known as Cloudy, who was in one of my very first episodes here in the studio. That video did very, very well. So thank you for you guys who watched that video and supported it and hit the thumbs up button and did all those great things that shares it to a wider audience. And if you feel like doing the same to this video, then that would be massively appreciated. Little virtual pat on the back, shall we call it. So with Cloudy's hair, what we're going to do is like a money piece technique, like a dedicated money piece technique. I've done this before. Don't think I've ever really covered it on the channel. But what we'll be doing is we've got like a fin shaped section that runs from the recession right round to the crown area, screws that beam of light so that it stops there. And then what we'll be doing, we'll be working underneath that section to start with in diagonal sections that are going to mirror the hairline. And then we're going to over direct each section that we take subsequently to that front hairline. So the first two sections, maybe even three sections, are going to be pretty much back to back, and then we're going to pull and that's going to make like over direction in the color, and it's going to get longer and softer into the back. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in terms of the technique. And then as far as the top goes, we're going to do pretty much exactly the same thing. We're going to do the first two or three back to back. I'll talk about the size of the sections and the depth of the sections and all those kind of things as I do it. But again, we'll be over directing everything from this fin shaped section to that front hairline. Now we don't want, as I said, we don't want the technique to be too fine because it will get lost in Cloudy's hair. If we need to kind of soften or change the, if we need to soften down the technique or change the blend or anything, we'll do that afterwards with like a little root tap toning situation. But if we don't get enough hair into techniques like this on thick hair, then just get lost and Cloudy won't be able to see any of the colour and she'll wonder why she sat here for 3 hours. That's really important to remember. Saturation is king. Getting that really thick product application onto the hair is just uber important. I've said it hundreds of times now, but it never changes. If you want that hair to get up to that level 10, nice and clean, barely any yellow in it, then you really do need to make sure the hair is really, really well saturated. Hold my foil by a third again, flatten the foil down, lift it up, secure it with the flap at the back. That prevents any bleeding for those of you who worry about stuff like that. And you can pretty much paint right up to the lip of the foil by doing that. And I know a lot of people get worried about that. And I know a lot of people in the comment section jump in and talk about bleach expanding, etc., etc. Bleach, I mean, I've used so many different types of bleach, and I only think that bleach expands when either the mixing ratio isn't exact, so you haven't necessarily followed the manufacturer's guidelines to the T. I mean, there are a few variables, but that's probably the primary variable of why bleach expands, and generally you can paint right up to the lip of the foil. The other thing that you can do to ensure that your consistency of your product is not going to swell is mix it on a slightly lower ratio. So I've mixed this 1 to 1.5 parts. The peroxide ratio that you can quite often use to make sure you don't get in any bleeding will be a 1 to 1.5. So I've got 30 grams of my powder to 45 grams of my peroxide, and that really helps to kind of give you slightly thicker consistency that's much less likely to travel out of the packet, which is always something that a lot of people, especially people new to foiling, they struggle with that a lot. Next section's slightly wider than the previous two, so there's like a 5mm gap in between those two sections, and now we've moved up 7mm gap. But remember, we're not going to over direct to this section, we're always going to be pulling back to that front hairline. As these sections as well get further away from the scalp, what we're going to do is tease the section slightly. So we're going to hold our fingers flat like this. We're going to hold the section in a slice, still a thin slice, we're not going to leave it too heavy. Tease up, then we're going to weave. Now you can put a clip in once you weave to stop the tease coming back down the hair. So if we stick that clip in, slide it up to the root area, that keeps the tease nice and close to the scalp, and then we can come in with our foil. Do exactly the same technique, but just remember where our front hairline is. And then what we can do is come in with our paint just below where you want the saturation to start. You to take your clip out once you saturated it, because it's quite a fine section, it will slip very easily. We want to keep these sections, the depth of the sections fine still, but we also want quite a chunky thickness. I'm using this comb, it gives quite a chunky weave, but obviously you could just do it manually if you wanted to and create a chunky weave yourself. So I'm just below where I wanted it to be, but I'm just going to feed it up slightly, just a tiny little bit up towards like a blending area, just so it's kind of softer. Cure this side and then this side, and then it's going to hang, it's going to be off scalp like that. So we're going to remember that you can see now that that's in line roughly with the front hairline. So it's really simple. That's the hardest bit to probably get your head around, is that you're going to leave it off the root. But you're going to now work through the sections, taking about 1 centimetre or 10 millimetres or half an inch, whichever you understand. And we're going to make sure that we over-direct everything back to that front hairline. So we're going to take a fine-ish section across the top of here. We're going to take that section, we can tease it from the underneath or on top, it's entirely up to you. You can do both sides. You're not going to do like back combing, you're not trying to create padding, you're just creating a little bit of diffusion at the root area. Then you should come in with your clip, pop your clip in. These are really good clips to do it with. There's kind of got like metal teeth on them, and these ones are by Framar, but other brands make them too. And then put your clip in just before your back combing, push it right into the root area to secure it. And then I recommend you hold your foil in that 45-degree angle. Don't start dropping the foil down. You can kind of roughly gauge where the hairline goes to, so you can start to paint just in front of that section. Take your clip out because it's a fine section and it will just drop down. And then just make sure, obviously, you saturate your section well, but you don't get involved with any of the hair that's on the ends, especially in this case it's already been reasonably highly pre-lightened, and I don't want to create any breakage. It's already at level 10, so I'm really dubious to make sure that I don't overlap any of this stuff. But obviously I do want to paint right up to it, because equally I don't want to leave a sort of level 7 brown bit halfway through the hair. And secure your foil. And we can see that the hair, so for like this one for example's sake, outside of the foil we've got about 2 inches roughly of hair. Outside of this foil we've got probably 2.5 inches, which would make perfect sense because we've gone back exactly half an inch or 1 centimetre. So that's why the hair is getting that much longer as we travel through the sections. At the front of the hair, the way we're going to do it, take a horizontal section. And we want to work really fine with our sections that are like bang on the hairline here. And in fact, actually, I want the very first section to be the very front hairline section. So let's just take that section, like so. And we're going to do this one right up to the hair. Take another section, we're going to just have basically no gap, the only hair in between will be the weave. Take that section. This one again will be right up to the hairline. So we're going to paint right up to the root area. In this instance I'm going to do a third one that's right up to the root area as well, just because Cloudy's got a bit of a sort of longer grown out fringe shape around the front that we actually cut in last time, but Cloudy bends over all day doing tattoos, so that wasn't any good. So that's being grown out. We're on to the top triangle section now, and I just wanted to show you kind of how this went down. So again, we're just sticking in 1 centimetre size sections. We're slicing the top off that section like so. Voila. We are teasing back. Everything's the same really. I just wanted to show you really how we apply the foil, and then we can either use our normal pintail to weave, or we can just use, like I'm using this weaving comb, which I kind of like. I've done a bit of mixture of the two really, and dependent on kind of how fine or thick I've wanted the weave. If I've wanted it fairly fine, I've gone in with like a normal technique, and if I've wanted it chunky like this, I've gone in with this. So with regard to where we place the foil, we have to come quite far down the head now, because obviously we've got a lot of travel here for this over direction. Hairline's about there, So we just want to kind of paint just below the hairline. Do your ends first, saturate your ends first, and then you can kind of tease up towards the root area, just like nice and easy. So just make sure you fold all your ends in, so you've got good saturation. That's the thing about having shorter falls, where you like fold and fold and fold. You've got quite a lot of heavy saturation there now, and then you can just come up and just blur any lines up towards the root area, fold it up and fold your edges. And then we've got pretty much one more to do here now. If we look at our little triangle, it's getting smaller and smaller. If we cut a centimetre or so off that triangle, just like that, slice off the top. Each of the slices, by the way, are about kind of 2 to 3 millimeters. Tease it, and then you can use the weaving technique. Like I said, it just, you know, you can do whatever you want really. You just got to weave your sections, and the weave will look slightly different to what I'd get from the comb. Nice thing about this technique though is it's quite quick as well. It's not like a really long technique. Like Claudia's got so much hair, we could be here all day if we are not careful. So making sure the technique is reasonably chunky as well just really helps with kind of not doing thousands and thousands of foils, because you can get caught in that as well, like if you're not careful. And it's a really hot day today here, and Claudia is melting underneath these foils, so we're going to flip them all back. We can flip them all back and not worry about them bleeding because of the nature of the technique. Okay guys, so that's it. We will let that process now. So I'm just going to show you it before I wave it, because I know that a lot of people want to see these techniques kind of before they're wavy. So we can see that, you know, that many piece is quite strong. Just turn you around, Claudia. But it's got this nice bit of hair that kind of sits over it that diffuses it. If we parted it hard, you can see it's pretty strong. Like Claudia was wondering where it was when it was dry, when it was first washed, you know, it was kind of like surprise, you know, there's your mini piece. But you can see like the pieces, the lightness that run through the hair from the over direction, you know, and it's quite soft and diffused and really pretty in the hair. So yeah, you know, nice to have this technique in the bag. I'm going to wave it. Okay, so at the back of Claudia's hair here, you can see that we've got really long diffused pieces. You know, the colour is really soft and it extends into that original balayage that we did on Claudia's hair previously. I really like the result of that. And then once we switch round to the side, so we can see through the front here, we've got a little bit more lightness higher up. We've got that beautiful face frame peeking through, which we'll take a good look at in just a second. But then it just extends down. It connects it through really beautifully, considering how long it's been since we did Cloudy's hair and how long the root area was that we saw in the beginning, kind of a good 8 inches. It really does connect it through really nicely. And we can see that face frame just popping through there, really nice. I love a little mini piece face frame like that. It really does accentuate a lot of people's skin tones, etc. Claudia's got a really good skin tone for this particular look. It's not too contrasty against her skin, just gives her that like creamy feel to her skin. I really like that about this particular look.